Welcome to The World Awaits.
Travel tales to inspire your wanderlust.
I'm Kirsty Bedford, journalist, editor and travel writer.
And I'm Belinda Jackson, author, travel journalist and columnist, and we're your weekly co-hosts.
Welcome back to The World Awaits. How are you all?
Hi everyone. How was your week, Belle?
Well, I've just flown in from Dubai and boy, are my arms tired. Ha ha, boom tish. Sorry. Let me tell you, I had the privilege to stay in the Emirates' new signature hotel, the Atlantis Royale. You might know the original Atlantis, the pink one with a giant arch on the end of the Palm Artificial Islands. You know the one I'm talking about, don't you, Kirsty? Yeah. Well, the Atlantis Royale takes it up a notch. It is currently the most luxurious hotel in Dubai, and that's saying something, with a sky-high pool club with Dolce & Gabbana everything from towels to swimwear. There was a beach club by the Japanese-Peruvian powerhouse Nobu, Michelin star chefs coming out of the woodwork, and the most incredible spa where I had a body scrub made from Dubai sand and dates. It was magnificent. The hotel opened last year with a performance by Beyonce, because that's how you open a hotel in Dubai. Thank you very much. And it just celebrated its first birthday.
Sounds amazing. So how much is all this luxury, Belle?
Well, we're coming into summer there, which is the low season for the Middle East because it becomes so insanely hot. So prices drop to around $8.50 a night. But when it cools back down after September, expect rooms to start at about $1,500. And if you thought this luxury was unattainable, when I stayed, almost every one of its 795 rooms was completely full, including the 4-bedroom royal mansion, which costs about 100,000 American dollars a night.
Is that all? 100,000 American a night. Amazing. And
That change, baby. It's been changing.
gosh. Okay, so it's amazing where people get their money from. Where can we read about this incredible property, Belle?
I'll be writing it up for Luxury Escape, so keep an eye out for the quarterly magazine or online, and I'll also be posting on my Instagram at global_salsa. Meanwhile, back at home, things have cooled off quite a lot here, with autumn well and truly settling in Melbourne, and it seems things have cooled off with flights too. Haha, nice segue.
Yes, so after years of very high flight prices, we're finally seeing some relief. So a report by Flight Centre Travel Group, as reported on Carry On in the last week, shows average airfares to New Zealand, Japan, the United States and the Middle East fell by more than 20% in the first quarter of 2024 compared to the same period last year, as international capacity from Australia has finally returned to 2019 levels. Yay! And that's great news for both of us because you have family in the Middle East, Belle, and I have family in New Zealand. And in December, when I flew back, I have to say it cost us about $1,100 each. Well, we're pre-pandemic, we were paying about $800 for the same period.
Yeah, prices, even just to Dubai, which is a feeder for Australians heading to Europe, have been insane, well over the $2,000 mark, and even $3,000 if you weren't hunting hard. But a quick search over the next few weeks sees flights to the Middle East under $2,000 with the major carriers such as Emirates, and much, much less with one stop as the Chinese and Southeast Asian carriers come back to Australia. So the data backs up my ad hoc search. It shows flights to Qatar experienced the biggest fare drop, with the average cost of a Doha-bound flight from Australia in the first quarter of this year falling by 25%, from more than $2,500 to around $1,800, and airfares to the UAE dropped by 22%.
We're going to Dubai and onwards to Europe at the end of June, but unfortunately I had already booked our flights, which is such a shame because the prices were ridiculously high. But what do you do? So airfares to New Zealand actually fell the most by 23%, from 1,176 to 900. So sort of roughly what I was saying before, what I've personally experienced as well. While average prices from Australia to Japan and the US decreased by 21%. That doesn't sound like a lot, but that can make 20% can make a significant difference. And UK, China and Singapore were also down.
And the reason for all of this, of course, is the return of all carriers into the Australian market and the introduction of new routes and capacity from such carriers as Delta and Singapore, which also help satisfy our pent-up demand for flights. So the destinations where we are all flying to, it tops with Japan, which is up 130% on pre-pandemic capacity. We cannot get enough of Japan. And Qatar, which is up more than 100%. I think its visibility as an alternative to Dubai and Abu Dhabi was no doubt pushed by its hosting of the World Cup in December 2022. And staying on airlines, Kirsty, can I please share my favourite quote of the week with you, which is from Michael O'Leary, the boss of Ryanair, Europe's most miserly low-cost carrier. In an interview with the Independent newspaper about frequent flyer schemes, he totally dismissed the idea of Ryanair launching one, saying, if you want something loyal, buy a dog. If you want the lowest fares in Europe, fly Ryanair. He is such a curmudgeon. I used to cover Ryanair when I lived in Ireland in an alternative life as a finance reporter. I know that may shock some of you out there because I can barely add up, but that is Michael O'Leary through and through. He is a curmudgeon. He is a cranky man.
Well, that works so far, I guess, given if you're loyal to an airline, you will get free flights, though. So that's a lot better than a low-cost flight. But anyway, if you want to read more, go to carryon.com.au, Australia's leading travel trade brand, where you'll find that Flight Centre report. And full disclosure, I also work for Carry On Luxury. So sign up to the newsletter if you want to keep abreast of all the latest luxury travel news at carryon.com.au, and just go to the luxury tab and a little pop-up box will come up.
You're listening to The World Awaits. We'd love it if you could leave us a rating and review on your favourite podcast platform.
All eyes are on Paris ahead of the Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games from the 26th of July. So today, my guest is Magali Deschanel, who is the founder of Family Twist, a company that creates luxury, family-friendly experiences across the great cities of Europe, including Rome, Amsterdam, Lisbon, and of course Paris, where she lives and works and will be talking about today. Magali, welcome to The World Awaits. Thank you so much for joining us from Paris.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Now, look, you. It's quite funny. When I asked you if you came from Paris, you said, well, nobody comes from Paris, but I have spent 20 years here. So, it is the most visited city in the world. So that doesn't surprise me. There's more than 40 million tourists visit Paris every year. Everybody wants to be there. If they're not there, they're planning to be there, or they've just come back from Paris. What makes this city so addictive that everyone has to visit at least once in their lifetime?
Well, I think the first reason is that Paris is a beautiful, beautiful city. And then when you compare to many other cities in Europe and everywhere else, there is a bit of a consistency. This city is being completely rebuilt by Haussmann, gives it really a sense of harmony. Like, all the streets pretty much look alike. All the main buildings also have the same architecture. And it really gives a sense of everything is the same. Everything is really in harmony. If you compare it to London, for instance, where I also used to live, everything is kind of mixed and matched. You have buildings from different times and they all are in the same city. But in Paris, really everything looks alike. And of course, except for being beautiful, I think the Parisian cultural life is absolutely stunning. You will not have enough of a life to visit all the museums. You will not even have enough of a day to visit the 14 kilometers of corridors of the Louvre. There is always an exhibition going on. And even if you're not going to actually visit a place, some places you're going like to see a theater play or to go for ballet. Even those places are worth the visit because they are also architectural jewels. So I think the city being beautiful is probably what attracts the most people. And then I think there is something about probably the Parisian lifestyle. I don't know if it's a dreamy lifestyle or if it's the actual Parisian lifestyle, but food is something being in Paris. Food, but also going to a cafe and have a cafe or having an aperitif outside on a terrace. I think this is part of the dream and part of why people want to come to Paris. And because I'm not originally from Paris, the first time I came to the city to live in it was when I was a student. And I remember I was very lucky because as a student, I had a small, tiny room, but on Ile Saint-Louis, which is probably the best place to discover Paris. And every day I walked to my school and I was just amazed by how everything was just gorgeous around me. And you arrive with these eyes full of surprises and beauty. And the big challenge is to keep those eyes, even after 20 years of living in Paris, because, Parisians sometimes can get a bit grumpy and bored, and they really should remember how they were and how they acted when they arrived in this city for the first time.
Well, I think, they have to share the city with so many visitors, with 40 million people. So they can't be selfish in that sense. But I can imagine that they'd be a bit grumpy. But then, from a visitor's point of view, with that many other people all wanting to have that beautiful experience, to eat the food, to see the Eiffel Tower, which is the number one attraction in the city. How do you manage to enjoy that city when we're all trying to have the same experience? Are there any tips or tricks you can suggest to make? I mean, Paris, as you've pointed out, it's overwhelmingly gorgeous, and there are so many things to see. And you can't do Paris in 3 days. You can't do Paris in a week. You can't do it in a month. You can barely do it in a lifetime. But how can you manage Paris so that you come away from it feeling like you've captured some of the essence of the city?
Mm-hmm. I think I would say three things. First, try to come when not all of the other tourists are in the city.
And when is that?
Well, for instance, the end of the year is actually a good season for me to visit Paris. I think it all comes with the second point, which is try to think ahead about what you want to get from Paris. If it is that you want to enjoy the food and the lifestyle and visit museums, most of this can be done inside. So probably come at the end of the year where it's quite magical because you have this Christmassy feeling, and you will have less tourists than in the middle of the month of June. I guess my second point would be really to plan ahead, because now you have to book for everything, including museums, and I'm not even mentioning the Eiffel Tower. And really think again about what you want to get out of this trip. The Eiffel Tower is a good example. I have two girls, and both of my girls wanted to go on top of the Eiffel Tower, so I ended up going with each of them separately, 1 year apart, to the Eiffel Tower. And to go from bottom to top with tickets, it took us 2.5 hours.
Wow.
Most of it being waiting in lines. And I think people should really wonder why they want to go on top of the Eiffel Tower. Because if it's to enjoy the view, well, guess what? From the Eiffel Tower, you cannot see the most beautiful thing in Paris, which is actually the Eiffel Tower. So maybe you should consider having a view from somewhere else over Paris, which will actually include the Eiffel Tower. For instance, my personal favorite view is probably the one from the Arc de Triomphe. I think the view from there is gorgeous. And you will not have to wait in line. Best thing is even to find a terrace next to the Arc de Triomphe. So Peninsula is a good thing for that. Or the Raphael Hotel, where you will have the exact same view, but also a glass of champagne, which is always nice. So, if it's for the view, probably the Eiffel Tower is not the best thing. And if it's going on top, just to go on top and put that on the Instagram, well, think about the time it will take you to get there. If you really want to go there, though, I think the second floor is amazing and the view is actually better than from the top.
And yes, I actually did that when we were in Paris last year. So we went up to the second and didn't join the queues to go up to the top. That's a really great point.
Yeah, because if you go to the top, first it's you just can literally turn around the top, which is a quite narrow corridor. So you will probably stay there for 15 minutes and then go down anyway. And you're almost too high to really enjoy the view on the cities. One thing I also notice every time I travel is that usually people don't like to walk or make any effort. So usually efforts actually come with a very nice price. And with both of my girls, and they were age 3 and 4, we went down by the stairs from the second floor. It's a very easy walk, and it's very nice. And you don't have to wait in line for the elevator to go down. And you can actually see the views on each side when you go down. So I think there'll be a bit of a trick. Then if people really want to go to the top and not queue, well, they can always contact us because we have access to VIP visits. But also this comes with a huge price. So again, that's also a question of how people want to travel.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, it's maybe you can recommend then where to stay in the city as well, because some areas of the city are far more crowded than others.
Sure.
And you will find those gorgeous narrow footpaths are just you're constantly battling against other people if you can't travel in the off season as you suggested. So, what about areas around Paris that you would recommend people visit or stay in? Sorry.
I'm always very surprised by where crowds are really concentrated. You see, I used to live in Montmartre for 4 years, not too far from Place des Abbesses. And I really noticed that as soon as you leave the streets next to Place du Tertre, literally like 2 streets away, you end up being in a very local area with nice, trendy restaurants and almost no tourists. So it's all about exploring the streets around the area you want to visit. But more generally, I think in Paris, the left bank is usually quieter than the right. You have the Luxembourg Garden that is amazing and where you can actually see Parisians until you get time and having snacks after school or having a run. It's a very popular place to have a run in Paris. So I would recommend the left bank of the river, which is also where you have more students and less companies. So it's a very nice area as well.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, has Paris, the reason why we're, even more fixated on Paris this year is, of course, the Summer Olympics are starting shortly, and which is interesting because they are being held in the period that traditionally Parisians leave the city to go on their summer vacation, isn't it?
Yes, I think it's on purpose. I think they really wanted especially the transportation to be less crowded as during the year, so that people can actually travel and access the different sites. So that's a good thing that it happens in August. The city is getting ready right now, and that's very nice because we can finally see it happening after months of talking about it. Now we can see they are building the different arenas in the city. So, for instance, on Place de la Concorde, they will hold the bikes and breakdance, and so there are now arenas built there. Same next to the Eiffel Tower, the beach volley is going to happen there, which is going to be fantastic. Same in Versailles, they finalized the area. Can you imagine, like all of the horse competitions are going to be held at the end of the canal of the Palace of Versailles.
Oh, that would be so beautiful.
Absolutely stunning. That would be. I think the images are going to be absolutely wonderful. So everything is getting ready. We can see also a lot of communication around the athletes getting ready and excited by the event. I think it's a wonderful event, and I think that's good for the city as well because it's like a lady going out for an opera. She's getting ready. So it's at the moment it's a giant construction site in the city, but everything is going to be put together for the event.
So if you is this the time to visit, or do you suggest maybe going after the Olympics, because then you have the benefit of the hair, the makeup, the dress of the lady going out, as opposed to sitting in the bathroom surrounded by all of the accoutrements of a good night out.
I think again it's very linked with the reason why people want to come. If they want to enjoy this event and attend the different competitions, I think it's a one in a lifetime opportunity. It is going to be the first time that the Olympics are actually happening everywhere in the city and in most of the historical areas. But for me, if this is the reason for them to come, then they should come during the Olympics. If people believe that at the same time in 4 days they can enjoy some competitions and then have a nice visit of the city and the same the next day, I think they should better come at this time. If they want to come to enjoy the city and visit all of its highlights, please do not come during the Olympics because transportation is going to be complicated and things will just take really more times. And it might be also that some of the museums are closed at this time. It's just, it's just that I prefer to anticipate the frustration of people coming at this time and not being able to really enjoy Paris. So if they want to enjoy the Olympics, they really should come, and they will see a bit of Paris with the same opportunity. But if they really want to see Paris, they should probably come after the Olympics.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a really great point. Are you going to see any of the events yourself? Are you staying in the city at that time?
I am. I think it's the big question right now when we have dinner with friends. The first question is always, are you staying during the Olympics or are you leaving the city? I'm staying because I have young kids, and I think for them it's probably their opportunity to see the Olympics in their city. And they are really into ballet and dance and gymnastics, and I think so. I have tickets for those sorts of competitions. So I'm going to see the trampoline, the gym. I'm also a rock climber, and there will be many climbing competitions. So I'm going to see that, and I think it's a wonderful. And I'm going to see the beach volley. The only reason why I'm going to see the beach volley is that it's at the bottom of the Eiffel Tower, and I think it's going to be beautiful. I need to review the rules of the game before going because I'm not sure I can follow. But I think it would be a shame not to attend this when it happens in your very own city.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I mean, that's interesting. You know, you mentioned you're bringing your children in there, and that is one of the focuses of your business, Family Twist, which is about traveling families and helping families travel well in places like in some of the great European capitals, including Paris. Are there any particular challenges that families face when they're traveling in France or in Paris in particular? And I'm thinking here, you know, of ease of access with prams, or, you know, if you've got fussy eaters, kids with food allergies, or maybe, you know, even having super active kids in a large city, you know, how they burn that energy off without driving everybody insane. Is Paris good for families, or does it require some thought beforehand?
I think a bit of both. And to be honest, now Family Twist is in 16 different capital cities or cultural areas in Europe. And the first issue is that those cities are not really imagined as playgrounds for kids. So you need to find ways to interest the kids in the different cultural highlights. And this is really what we try to do at Family Twist, offering them games and hands-on experiences so that they can actually make the most of the city and understand the culture at destination. But if we talk a bit more about logistics, Paris is a nightmare for strollers for exactly the same reason as it is a wonderful city. It's just that the metro was created in the 19th century. At the time, they did not really take these aspects into consideration. So, and same for the main buildings. And this is an issue for strollers when you think about it, but it's also a very big issue for wheelchairs.
Yes.
To travel in the city and to visit some areas. I remember we have a medieval tour in Paris that is great, and where they have to become knights and damsels in the streets of the cities. Well, by definition, those medieval buildings are not fit for strollers and wheelchair. So my biggest recommendation will be to take a baby carrier to travel in the city. To come back to your question for food, I think we have very lucky with bakeries in Paris, because this is probably a favorite place of the kids. If they don't like sugar and snails, if they don't like frogs and snails, they can always have a baguette or a sandwich or a pain au chocolat, except for the ones who don't like gluten or eat gluten-free. In which case, they can always eat macarons, because this is a gluten-free option, or crepes from Brittany are actually made with buckwheat, so this is fine as well. But I think you always have easy options, especially nowadays in Paris. You don't have to eat very fancy food all the time, and bread is your best friend, I think.
Yeah.
Regarding active kids, well, it's a bit of the same in all of the cities. What we recommend is that when families plan their trip, they should really make a mix in between the different activities they have during the day. So if they go to a museum in the afternoon, they should really learn differently, either by doing or having a cooking class or by just running around in the park. And Paris is getting better and better with pedestrian ways. Especially now, all of the banks of the River Seine are accessible for pedestrians. There is no more car there. So it's always a great way, wherever you are in the city, to kind of go and have a run and burn the energies of the kids. So you can find options. And Paris is a relatively easy city to live. So you can go also for a day break to Versailles or to Giverny. It's not such a big city as London, for instance, where it takes hours to get out. So I would say it's all right on this. And then the point about is it kids friendly? Well, as I said at the beginning, I think most of the cities are not kids friendly, and that's why Family Twist is there to help the families turn them into playgrounds.
Absolutely. And if you had to name one of those activities that you offer, something that was really iconic, a very Parisian thing to do with children, what would you suggest?
Well, it's our travelers are usually coming for the first time to Paris, so I'm not sure what they really want to experience is the most Parisian things. They really want to see the highlights as well. So we have treasure hunts at the Louvre. We have an escape game on the left bank, which is quite Parisian, that is geared to teenagers. And then we have, so in terms of hands-on workshops, we have a perfume workshop where they can design their own perfume. We have macaron class where they can do their macarons. We have an impressionist workshop. This is a very Persian one because we're going to a museum that is not so famous. This is Musée de l'Orangerie. I don't know if you've been to this one. It's in Jardin des Tuileries, and it was designed to welcome the water lilies by Monet.
Yes,
which are enormous and very iconic, and literally they built the museum around the paintings. So that you are in the best conditions to experience just monumental pieces of art. And you just stay there for 20 minutes, not with a guide, but with the art instructor, who is also an artist. And she will tell you about the techniques of Monet, using the pastels to give the impression that you're in front of the lake and that you can see the clouds and the trees in the reflection of the lakes. And then you take a car and you go to our workshop, and then it's the family time to experience the techniques of Monet. So they will be in this wonderful workshop all together, first painting and then using pastels to reproduce their very own version of the Water Lilies by Monet. And when you think about it, those hands-on workshops are probably not the thing the families will think first when they come to Paris, because they really want to see the highlights. But this is usually what they prefer at the end of their stay,
because they've gotten under the skin of the city a little.
Yes, first they will meet with an artist or with a chef or with someone who is absolutely passionate about what she does or he does. And second, it's like a little bubble of quietness in the middle of a usually very busy trip and in a very busy city. So at this time, they are just by themselves as a family with an artist, experiencing something together. And I really believe in the fact that the best memories are built when you actually make something as a family together. This is where you build your memories. It's not when you just are passive and just watching or looking at some things in the city. It's when we see parents being first super enthusiastic about the fact that they are going to travel with their teenagers, because they know that in some years maybe the teenagers are going to leave, and it may be their last opportunity to share this together. And but they, as you said, they really want the kids to visit the museums. And I think my advice would be to try to listen to the teenagers' interests. And it's not true that they don't have any, and that the only thing they want to do is to stay at home on the sofa. And those interests should drive the choices of activities during the stay. For instance, if they like fashion, well, you should have a fashion workshop. If they like music, we recorded some songs in the professional music studios, if they are interested in series, like imagine that in Paris, one of the big reasons why people want to come as well is that over the last few years, we had many series about Paris, including obviously Emily in Paris.
Yes.
And we designed a tour about Emily in Paris. And that's great for teenagers. And we give them Polaroid cameras and they have to take selfies in different places. And then we created a playing game, like playing cards, where they have to answer questions about Emily in Paris. And some people will think, well, this is not Parisian culture. But when you think about it, we use Emily in Paris as an alibi to discuss, is this Emily in Paris, or is this real Paris? And at the end of the 2 hours, you will have discovered many of the Parisian habits and things to do, like how do we work in Paris? Is Emily in Paris really working the way Parisians do? Does she dress the way Parisians do? Does she eat what Parisians eat? And at the end, you will learn a lot about first the area where they shot the series, which is a very nice area in Paris, and second, about how Parisians live. And this is what you want your children to get out of the trip, as well as to know a bit more about the local life. So I think for teenagers, really important to listen to their interest and to try during the day, each day, to include something that they will really like and they are really expecting. And then it makes it much easier to add a visit to this, because they will have had their little me time.
Yeah.
And I think also, talking about museums, that's very interesting, because this year, so our best-selling activity is the treasure hunt at the Louvre. And we have 2 versions of it. We have the treasure hunt at the Louvre for kids, and we have the Louvre Mystery for teenagers. And last year was the first year where we sold more tours for teenagers than tours for kids at the Louvre. And the tours are very different. The tours for teenagers is all about an escape game. So they have to solve riddles and open a cryptext in which there is a hidden map of the Louvre where they have to move to discover where's the last room they have to go to find the combination that is going to open the lock that is going to give them the gift. And so they keep their attention because they have something to look for. And most of the parents always come and arrive and tell the guy, I'm so sorry, my children are not so used to going to museum. This is going to be a catastrophe. I'm so sorry. And usually at the end, they're like, wow, I didn't know my kids could be so focused for 2 hours. So that's really about listening to their wishes and talking to them directly, and not them always follow their parents. Sometimes it's good as well when the parents follow the kids or the teenagers. This is what kids, I remember having this child who told me one day, well, I really enjoyed the Impressionist workshop I described to you earlier. And I said, oh, really? Why? And the boy told me, this is the first time I painted with my dad. You see, for once, the parents follow what the kids wants to do and not the opposite. So that would be my advice for teenagers. But I don't have any teenagers, so I will not, maybe I'm not in a good position to give advice.
Oh, no, it sounds absolutely fascinating. So if somebody can book, so how do you arrange your tours? Does somebody book just for 2 hours, or do you curate a whole package for the holiday? How do you normally structure your
you can do both. Either people take only the experiences with us, and we have a collection of experiences, just because usually it's the first time the family is coming to the city. Most of them really want to visit the same things, so we have a collection that covers most of the highlights in the city. And some tours are 2 hours, some tours are 3 hours. There is always a game, a mission, or a quandary to solve, and it's always privately guided. And it includes the fast pass tickets. Or you can book the whole itinerary for Family Twist, which means that we take care of the hotels as well, because we partner with hotels which we know are family friendly, meaning that they have the good room structure. And in those very urban destinations, it's not so easy to find. So suites with 2 rooms or connecting rooms that we guarantee. And we can take care of all the transportation as well, with booster seats or baby seats, depending on the age of the kids, to make sure everything is super easy and super smooth during the whole stay. And if we organize the whole trip, we also have our operation team who is helping on the phone anytime there is an issue, or if the family cannot is a bit late or doesn't know where to go, we are always there to help as well.
Perfect. Now, my final question for you, which is the question that we ask all our guests, is, and it may come from one of your experiences, or maybe you don't want to share that. But tell me, what is your most bizarre travel experience?
Well, I have to think about this one, to be honest. And before selling very high-end luxury trips, and then doing that myself, because it's the environment I work in. I traveled in a very backpacker style, and I used to live in Shanghai. I spent 1 year in Shanghai, and so when I spent my year in China, I had this opportunity to travel on the Silk Road on the Chinese side, which is now difficult to travel to, considering the conditions there.
Yeah.
Anyway, the next year was my final year being a student. We decided to continue the Silk Road itinerary on the other side of the borders, and so we traveled to Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan.
Amazing.
By ourselves with no agencies. Amazing. And being really outdoor people, we went on a hike with someone, because it was a very, very long hike. So usually we just carry our bags, and there it was in the mountains with heavy bags, and we were really tired by the travel. So we took a guide who offered to have a horse to carry the bags. And so we did that. And at some point we were a bit tired of being with the guide all day. And we said, well, you can go ahead and we will join you at the house in front of the lake, thinking that the lake will be a small lake with just one single house in front of the lake. So the guy left and we arrived on top of the mountain. We had a wonderful view on the lake, which obviously was kilometers long, with many houses around the lake. And the guide had gone with our bags and everything it contained and his horse. So we went down the mountain, arrived in front of the lake. It's starting to be quite late. At this time, we had no cell phone. So we were literally lost in front of a lake in Uzbekistan with no cell phone and nothing that was inside our backpacks. So at this time, the farmers came back from work, and so we ended up hitchhiking a horse. I don't know if you already hitchhike a horse, but literally stopping farmers on their horses. As you can imagine, they did not plan ahead that they will have tourists to come on their horse, so each single farmer was on his horse. So they said, I mean, we understood because we couldn't speak. My husband could speak Russian, but they didn't speak Russian then. So they gave us a horse, thinking we will definitely manage, being two of us on a horse, to steer the horse. So we went on the horse, two people. So one on the saddle, which was me, because I was supposed to be able to ride a horse, and my husband being at the back, not on the saddle, because obviously it was a saddle for one person. And my husband is not so used to riding horses. And if you can see the physiognomy of a horse in your head, you can easily understand that if the person at the back of the saddle kicks the horse, it's not in the right place and the horse will not be happy, which is exactly what happened. So the horse went galloping, and we had two people on this poor horse. So the farmer said, okay, no, this is not going to work. So in the end, we ended up being each of us at the back of a farmer in the middle of Uzbekistan on a horse, trying to desperately get our backpacks back and to understand where this house in front of the lake was, which we finally managed to do after probably 1 hour at the back of a horse in the middle of Uzbekistan. And it all ended well, you see.
Well, congratulations for getting out of that unscathed. Magali, it was so great to have you here on The World Awaits. We've really enjoyed listening to your experience in Paris and your experience in Uzbekistan. That sounds terrifying. I know exactly what you're talking about, sitting behind the horse. I actually believe I'm doing exactly the same thing. Yeah, falling off it, because where you kick the horse is not where the horse wants to be kicked. And you do it by instinct. You just grab onto the horse with your knees. But so I'm there. I'm living it with you. But thank you so much for sharing all of your advice and your expertise on the City of Light, one of the most beautiful cities in the world. You're so lucky to be there today. And And we look forward to seeing more about how Paris is going to change with the Olympics and how more beautiful it will become when we visit it afterwards. So thanks again for your time.
Thank you so much. That was a pleasure to discuss with you today.
Our tip this week is about how to avoid travel scams, and there are loads of them out there. So Southern Cross Travel Insurance has revealed the most common travel scams doing the rounds.
First off the rank is taxi scams. Just about every traveller has a story about a dodgy taxi experience, from allegedly broken meters to questionable driving routes. Ways to avoid being scammed by a taxi are to always check before you get in that the meter's working so they can't do a dodgy on you, and don't be afraid to go with somebody else. Also, you can check in advance any rideshare options that are available so you can prepay, or at least compare their fares. And also download local maps before you go so you know where you're going and aren't taken the very, very long way around.
Passport scams are also, unfortunately, highly common, and the easiest way to be scammed here is by giving your passport as a security deposit for something. So the obvious answer is never hand over your passport to anyone as ID or a security deposit. And one of the oldest scams in the book is rental scams, so being blamed for damage to equipment like surfboards, scooters and skis, even cars. So always take photos of any damage before you use the equipment.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's also online scams, which are increasingly common. So a good way to check if a payment isn't legit is to check the URL begins with https:// rather than just HTTP. It's all about the S, which should appear on the payment page. Visa requirements are another one. Fraudsters exploit the fact that they can be really overwhelming to fill in and offer you a phony visa service that claims to manage your application for a costly fee. So to avoid this, you have to do your homework, check reviews of those companies, and if in doubt, I would ring the embassy of the country you're visiting to ask them if that service is actually legitimate. Often you'll find the company is charging you an enormous service fee when the actual visa is just $20.
Street scams are also unfortunately really common, with pickpockets and people offering free gifts and then demanding payment. And actually mostly common in Southeast Asia also, this advice shows. So unfortunately you have to be firm, say no from the outset, and it can obviously be challenging because we're programmed not to be rude. So it can be hard when someone comes up to you and you're continually saying no. But obviously the alternative can be much, much worse. So with pickpockets, consider an anti-theft bag, or leave all your unnecessary valuables at home. Don't have your wallet and phone out on display, and take extra care in busy tourist hotspots. So it's always worthwhile doing some online research on the destination you're visiting and find out what pickpocketing techniques are being used, because there have been some absolute shockers like that. Remember that one in Rome where they were throwing toy babies at you?
Oh, awful. And also kids, kids running up and waving cardboard in your face or a leaflet or something like that so that you're distracted and then all your bags are gone, baby. Some listeners might recall I had my phone stolen off a table at a pub in London, and it caused so many problems because I'd saved my airline and train tickets virtually. Thankfully, they weren't accessible as I had them in a secure Dropbox file, but my advice is to back up everything before you go, and don't leave your phone on the table in the pub, even if, like mine, it was 5 centimetres from my hand, which is really tricky because we've always got our phones out when we're travelling. We're taking photos of the things that we're seeing, we're taking selfies, we're checking itineraries and stuff like that. I guess, Kirsty, I just want to remind you of that stat in London. 250 phones a day are stolen in central London. So it's in places like that, you've just got to be super aware about those sorts of things. And we'll put the link to the Southern Cross research in the show notes about common travel scams and how to avoid them.
Next week, I chat to Bruce Poon-Tip about his decision to take his travel company G Adventures into the luxury space, why there is increasing demand for a luxe experience while still stepping out of your comfort zone, and how these new G Luxe experiences will transform travel.
And if you would like to help support our production costs, you can buy us a coffee at ko-fi.com, which is ko-fi.com/The World Awaits. so we can continue to bring you inspirational travel interviews with the world's best.
That's a wrap for The World Awaits this week. Click to subscribe anywhere you listen to your favourite pods. And where can people find you, Kirsty?
I'm at Kirsty Wrights on Instagram. That's KIRSTIE Wrights, WRITES. And where can people find you, Belle?
You can find me at globalsalsa.com or on Insta at global_salsa.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.